Every year in the United States, over 16,000 people die from taking the same anti-inflammatory pills you probably have in your bathroom cabinet right now. That number comes from the American Gastroenterological Association. 103,000 hospitalizations, 16,500 deaths every single year from pills you can buy at any gas station for $2. On an island in southern Japan, there is a village called Ojimi, population under 4,000. The average woman there lives past 90. Heart disease, the number one killer in America, barely exists there. Chronic inflammation, the condition that drives almost every major disease in the Western world, is nearly absent from their medical records, and they don't take a single pill for it. Instead, they drink something every morning, something their ancestors brought to those islands 500 years ago through the old spice routes from Southeast Asia. It costs less than $1. You can find the same ingredient at any Walmart in America right now, and there are over 50 clinical studies confirming it works, as well as the drugs that are killing 16,000 people a year. This is what it is, why it works, and why nobody in the pharmaceutical industry will ever tell you about it. Most people think inflammation is what happens when you twist your ankle. Your joint swells up, turns red, hurts for a few days, and then it goes away. That is acute inflammation. Your immune system doing its job. It sends blood and white cells to the damaged area, cleans up the mess, and shuts itself off. But there is another kind, the kind that does not shut off, the kind that runs quietly, day after day, for years, without you ever knowing it is there. Doctors call it chronic low grade inflammation. You cannot feel it, you cannot see it, but it is eating you from the inside. Chronic inflammation is now linked to heart disease, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, most cancers, depression, and autoimmune disorders. A paper published in Nature Medicine in 2019 called it the most significant cause of death in the world, responsible for more than 50% of all deaths globally. The joint pain you started noticing at 45, the brain fog that showed up in your 50s, the blood pressure that crept up without explanation. Those are not signs of aging. Those are signs of a body that has been inflamed for decades without anyone telling you what was actually happening. I grew up watching my grandparents live past 90 without any of that. No joint pain, no brain fog, no cabinets full of pills. It was only when I started reading what was happening in America and Europe that I realized what we had was not normal at all. It was exceptional. When researchers from the Okinawa centenarian study measured inflammatory markers in our elders, people in their 90s and past 100, their levels were dramatically lower than age matched populations in the West, and the researchers wanted to know why. Part of the answer is diet, part of it is movement, but one element kept showing up in every analysis of our daily habits, and it was the one thing that no other long lived population on Earth shared with us: a tea made from a root that our ancestors brought to these islands 500 years ago. A route that Western science has spent 3 decades studying, and that the pharmaceutical industry has absolutely no financial interest in you ever finding out about. When most Americans feel pain or stiffness, they reach for the same thing: ibuprofen, naproxen, aspirin, NSAIDs. 30 million Americans take one every single day. 84 million prescriptions are written for them every year just in the United States. They work by blocking an enzyme called cyclooxygenase, COX1 and COX2. Block the enzyme, block the pain. You feel better in 30 minutes. But COX1 is not just an inflammation enzyme. It also produces the protective lining of your stomach. Every time you swallow an ibuprofen, you are stripping that protection away. And if you do it often enough, long enough, your stomach starts to bleed. The numbers are staggering. More Americans die every year from anti-inflammatory pills than from AIDS and cervical cancer combined. A 2013 meta-analysis published in The Lancet reviewed 280 studies covering over 124,000 participants and found that regular NSAID use significantly increases the risk of heart failure, stroke, and kidney damage. The FDA now requires every single NSAID to carry a black box warning about cardiovascular risk. That is the most severe warning the FDA can place on a drug without pulling it from the market. The global anti-inflammatory drug market is worth over $122 billion. The NSAID segment alone is worth $24 billion a year. Every single company that dominates this market knows the risks. Every single one of them keeps selling. And here is the part that I find hardest to accept. A randomized clinical trial published in Clinical Interventions in Aging took 367 patients with knee osteoarthritis. One group received 1,200 milligrams of ibuprofen per day. The other received 1,500 milligrams of curcumin extract per day. Curcumin, the active compound in the root we have been putting in our tea for 5 centuries. After 4 weeks, both groups showed the same improvement in pain, stiffness, and physical function. But the curcumin group reported gastrointestinal side effects at half the rate, 13% versus 28%. Same result. One costs you your stomach lining. The other costs you about $1. Curcumin cannot be patented. It is a naturally occurring compound. You cannot own it. You cannot build a $24 billion industry around something anyone can grow in their backyard. So instead, you make sure nobody ever finds out that it works just as well as the thing you are selling. The root is called ukon in Japanese. In Okinawa, we call it ukchin. The rest of the world knows it as turmeric. But the turmeric you find in Okinawa is not the same thing you sprinkle on a curry in London or New York. And the way we use it has nothing to do with cooking. The story starts sometime between the 1400s and the 1500s. Okinawa was not part of Japan back then. We were the Ryukyu Kingdom, an independent chain of islands sitting right in the middle of sea route between China, Southeast Asia, and the Japanese mainland. Traders from Thailand, Indonesia, the Philippines, they all passed through our ports. And somewhere along the way, someone brought turmeric root to our shores. Okinawa is subtropical. Turmeric, a tropical plant in the ginger family, thrived here in a way it never could on the Japanese mainland. The rest of Japan has almost no tradition of using spices, but it became part of our culture because the land allowed it and because we were connected to the people who had been using it as medicine for thousands of years before us. By the 1600s, the Ryukyu kingdom had figured out what they had. According to Yoichi Satoi, a researcher at the University of the Ryukyus, turmeric was declared a government monopoly. but the kingdom controlled its production in the same way they controlled sugar. It was that valuable, not as a spice, as a medicine. Then the Ryukyu kingdom fell. Japan annexed Okinawa in 1879. The trade routes shifted, the monopoly dissolved. Turmeric faded from public attention, even within Japan. But in Okinawa, we never stopped using it. While the rest of the world forgot, the old families on our island kept growing achin in their gardens, kept grinding it, kept brewing it every morning the same way their great grandparents had done 300 years before. The knowledge was never written in a textbook. It was passed down through kitchens, through grandmothers, through the daily act of boiling water and dropping in a piece of golden root. While we were quietly drinking our tea, Western science was slowly discovering what we already knew, but they were discovering it inside a laboratory, not inside a kitchen. And once curcumin entered the scientific literature, the pharmaceutical industry took notice. Not because they wanted to help people, because they wanted to know if this compound threatened their business. The compound that gives turmeric its golden color is called curcumin. It makes up about 2 to 7% of the root by weight. What it does inside the human body is something pharmaceutical companies have spent decades trying to replicate and failing. Ibuprofen blocks COX enzymes. One mechanism, one target. Curcumin operates on multiple inflammatory pathways simultaneously. It suppresses NF-κB, the master switch of inflammation in the human body. It inhibits COX2, the same enzyme ibuprofen targets, but without touching COX1, which means it does not destroy your stomach lining. It reduces cytokine production, the signaling molecules that tell your immune system to keep attacking even when there is nothing left to attack. No single pharmaceutical drug on the market does all of those things at once. A review published in Nutrients in 2024 analyzed 54 separate meta-analyses of randomized controlled trials on curcumin. The findings were consistent across the board. Significant reduction in C-reactive protein, the primary marker doctors use to measure inflammation. Significant reduction in inflammatory cytokines, and every single meta-analysis that examined insulin resistance found that curcumin improved it. 12 for 12. A scoping review covering 389 clinical trials found that 92% reported positive effects on pain and 86% on physical function. Some directly compared curcumin to NSAIDs and found what researchers describe as non-inferiority. Clinical language for it works just as well. But curcumin has a bioavailability problem. Your body does not absorb it easily. That is the fact the pharmaceutical industry loves to point at when they dismiss it. What they do not mention is that we solved this problem centuries ago. In Okinawa, we have always consumed turmeric with black pepper, fats from cooking, and fermented preparations. Piperine, the active compound in black pepper, increases curcumin absorption by up to 2000%. That number comes from a study published in Planta Medica. A pinch of black pepper turns a poorly absorbed root extract into a clinically effective anti-inflammatory compound. And the fermentation process that Okinawan families have been using for generations breaks down curcumin molecules into forms the body absorbs more readily. The old women in our village who fermented their turmeric before brewing it were performing pharmaceutical grade bioenhancement in their kitchens without ever reading a single research paper. 500 years of empirical refinement arriving at the same conclusion that a laboratory in 2011 confirmed with a mass spectrometry. I want to give you exactly what you need to start this today. The traditional Okinawan method is simple. 1 teaspoon of turmeric powder, roughly 3 to 4 grams. Boil water, add the turmeric, simmer for 8 to 10 minutes. Drink it. My grandmother did this every morning before sunrise for as long as I can remember. She lived to 96. To get the most out of it, based on the clinical research, add 3 things. First, black pepper, a quarter teaspoon. The piperine increases absorption by 2000%. This is the single most important detail in this entire video. Turmeric without black pepper is a fraction of what it could be. Second, a fat sauce. Curcumin is fat soluble. A splash of coconut oil, coconut milk, even whole milk. It needs fat to cross the intestinal wall. Third, the dosage. 2 to 3 teaspoons of turmeric powder per day, split across 2 cups of tea to approach a therapeutic dose. If you want the concentrated version, curcumin extract capsules, standardized to 95% cost, between $8 and $14 at Walmart for a 60-count bottle. 3 capsules a day with fat and black pepper. The cost. A bag of organic turmeric powder at Walmart costs about $4 for 8 ounces. At 2 teaspoons per day, 1 bag lasts over 3 weeks. That is 19 cents a day. A daily anti-inflammatory protocol for under 25 cents. Here is the recipe. Boil 2 cups of water. Add 1 teaspoon of turmeric powder and a quarter teaspoon of ground black pepper. Simmer 10 minutes. Add a tablespoon of coconut oil or coconut milk. 1 cup in the morning with breakfast, 1 in the evening with dinner. You will not feel anything on day 1. This is not ibuprofen. Curcumin works by reducing the underlying inflammatory processes over time. Most clinical trials show results starting at 4 weeks. By 8 weeks, the full effect is established. You are not covering up a symptom. You are addressing the cause. I am not telling you to throw away your medication. I am not a doctor. What I am telling you is what my family has done for 500 years, what 60 years of research has confirmed, and what a $122 billion industry hopes you never look into for yourself. 16,500 people die every year in America from anti-inflammatory drugs, and on a small island 8,000 miles away, people who have never taken those drugs are outliving the entire Western world by decades. That is not a coincidence. If you are dealing with chronic pain, stiffness, or fatigue, try this for 30 days. $1, 1 root, 2 cups a day. Track how you feel at the beginning and at the end. That is all I am asking. My grandmother never read a clinical trial. She just made her tea every morning, worked her garden, and lived to see her great-grandchildren grow up. The science caught up to her 50 years later. And the only reason it took that long is because nobody profits when you heal yourself for pennies. Drop your age in the comments and tell me what you are currently taking for pain or inflammation. And if your grandparents had a natural remedy they swore by, tell me about that too. Because that knowledge is disappearing. And every story you share here keeps it alive for someone who needs it. In the next video, I am going to show you 13 items you can buy at any Walmart for under $4 that Okinawan elders have used for centuries. You have walked past them 1,000 times without knowing what they do. That changes when you see what I am going to show you.